But for all the victims of al-Qaeda, we should remember that the largest terrorist attack in British history, the most deadly one on July 7th, 2005, was carried out by al-Qaeda. We should remember that thousands of victims of al-Qaeda died in Iraq as a result of the al-Qaeda suicide bombers. We should remember the several dozen people who died at a wedding in Amman, Jordan in 2005 because of al-Qaeda. And the list goes on and on, John.
I mean, and if we look at the warnings that are coming out now from the State Department for U.S. citizens, in fact, the warnings that are now around the world, essentially for people to be careful at airports, be careful at hotels, because of this concern for some kind of retaliation. But is it possible for some kind of grand retaliation by al-Qaeda? Because it seems that in recent years they've been getting away from these big gestures to small lone wolf kind of attacks.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have the capacity to do a 9/11 or anything close. That said, if Northwest Flight 253 had blown up over Detroit, that would have killed 300 mostly Americans on board. More people on the ground in Detroit would have had a transformational effect on global aviation, tourism, and international business, and probably would have been a crippling blow to the Obama presidency. Luckily, it didn't happen. But the point is that these groups do retain some residual capacity. They can get lucky, and certainly the death of bin Laden is something that a number of people around the world will try and take revenge, particularly in the country where he's just been killed, because the people motivated by these ideas regard the United States not only as an enemy, but the Pakistani government itself. We've seen literally thousands of Pakistani civilians being killed by groups motivated by al-Qaeda's ideology in the past several years, and bin Laden and his number two, Ayman al-Zawahiri, have made it a point of al-Qaeda policy to attack the Pakistani state and military in the last several years.
One last very quick question. Who knew in Pakistan, within the Pakistani government, that bin Laden was where he was?
I don't think we know the answer to that, John.
Okay. Peter, thank you very much. Peter Bergen, live for us this evening in Washington. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, we want to take a step back for just a moment with some background on Osama bin Laden's life before the 9/11 attacks on the United States back in 2001. And he was born in 1957 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, the 17th of 52 children fathered by Mohammed bin Laden. Now, in 1979, bin Laden graduated with a degree in civil engineering from a Saudi university. After the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan that same year, he joined the Afghan resistance known as the Mujahideen. Now, for most of the 1980s, bin Laden supported and at times even fought alongside the Afghans. In 1988, he founded al-Qaeda with the mission of providing men and money for the Mujahideen. Now, after the US invasion of Kuwait back in 1990, bin Laden turned his attention to the United States for its presence on Saudi soil near the Muslim holy sites of Mecca and Medina. It began a series of terror attacks that would last for years. In 1993, he was assumed to have been behind the first attack on the World Trade Center in New York. In 1998, saw a pair of truck bombs at US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. And then in 2000, bin Laden is linked to the bombing of the USS Cole in Yemen. All of it leading up to the 9/11 attacks that destroyed the World Trade Center in New York and